So this is a great turnout. It's really nice to see you all, so many friendly faces. We've been doing this mostly in person this year, so it's nice to get back out in public and see everyone again and shake a few hands and get a few hugs in now and then. I just wanted to mention that we do want you to sign up at some point. In particular, if you want to be notified of meetings like this, or you want to be notified of things that we think you may be interested in. We'll try not overwhelm you, but you can always disconnect from us if you want. But this is a good way for us to keep in communication with you. So please sign in. Fernando Beretta is right there, and he's my aide. So if you need something specific, you can ask him today. And Rhonda Cutter is also one of my aides, and she's not with us today. We have a couple guests today, and I just want to mention them. Karen and Melinda from HHS. They're in the back of the room. We have Stephen and Emily from the fire district. Thank you. We have Justin from the sheriff's office.
Jason.
He's got a brother. It's Justin. Sorry, Jason. And then we have Kathleen Kilgariff in the back, of the very back of the room. In case you know, Kathleen is organizing our short-term rental information and leading the planning effort on that. So you want to get to know her, and you probably, if you emailed about short-term rentals, you probably send it to str@marincounty.org, and Kathleen gets all those emails. So 3 announcements I just wanted to make that I thought you'd be interested in. Our rental assistance program, we have some information on the table. It's still open. The COVID funding is still available. And a lot of the rules around who gets it and who can apply for it and get it have been reduced. And so Community Action Marin through West Marin Community Services is going to be open all this year, giving additional rental assistance to people that qualify. And we just got over $4 million in additional funding from the state. So we've gotten at this point about $40 million from the federal government and the state government to do rental assistance since COVID started. The other thing that's on the back table I just want to mention, because the county has helped sponsor to this, EAC has put together a really wonderful stewardship guide for the whole coast, and really gives you some recommendations for those who are visiting the coast or even residents, some things you should know about the coast and some expectations of how you should behave when you're visiting the coast. So there's a few of those there. I don't think there's enough for the whole crowd, but it is available on EAC's website also. Lastly, announcement today for me is tomorrow at the Marin Civic Center is Ember Stomp. It's year 2 of all the products that are on the market for home hardening, vegetation management, those things about wildfire management. It's a good place to go tomorrow from 11 to 5. It's a fun festival. There is music, games, all sorts of vendors showing off their products, and also I think there's going to be beer tomorrow even there. It's quite a celebration, but really to get you interested in how to protect your home and learn about the work we've been doing around vegetation management. So if you feel like running over to Hill tomorrow between 11 to 5, it's a great free event. There'll be food trucks too with free food. The whole event is free, and I believe at 1:15 and at 3 o'clock they're going to have a real fire on a building to show you how a building performs in a wildfire. And I think they're going to do that twice tomorrow if the weather cooperates. So I'm going to be really brief starting my conversation today, because I usually talk about what are my priorities. But I think while we thought coming out of COVID things were going to be a little simpler, I think you all realize that, especially here in Bolinas, things have gotten a lot more complicated probably. For sure, starting with the post office closing and moving out of their old building and those sorts of issues. So I know there's more important issues today probably to hear from you about and talk to you about than my priorities. I can cover those if we have time, and they're on my website anyway, so you can find those. But I really wanted to hear from you today and hear about what your concerns are and what are the issues going on right now. I know there's several, and we can have that conversation, and it'll be an open conversation. The only thing I ask is you be respectful of your neighbors who are in the audience and friends in the audience, and that we'll give everyone one opportunity to ask a question, make a comment, try and get through the whole room, and then if there's time, we'll accept second comments. So is there anyone first here that I haven't recognized? I know Annie is here from Bolinas Community Land Trust. Thank you. New Executive Director. Thank you for being here, Annie. And I also want to thank the Community Center and Randy for hosting us ever since we started. We're over 150 community meetings now that we've had in 6 years plus that I've been on the Board of Supervisors. And I'm really proud of that because I was challenged by my colleagues that I would never sustain this. But actually, it's not sustaining it. This energizes me to want to do a better job. And it energizes my staff to be out and seeing and hearing from you all. So we're really proud of that, though. We have had that many, and this is our 10th of 11th this series, and we have Wednesday night in Muir Beach will be our final one for the spring, and then we'll start planning for the fall. So we'll be back soon, and we're always available to come back for community meetings. I know you've been meeting as a community on several issues, and Fernando's been able to attend some of those on behalf of my staff. So really happy to have him here and available. And he is bilingual, so that's very helpful for some of our Spanish-speaking community in particular. So I'm going to open it up and see who wants to be brave enough first to bring up an issue that you want me to discuss today. And I suspect I know what some of them are, but you may surprise me too. Yes?
I don't think there's going to be much discussion behind this, and it's sort of a unique situation particularly well, not every. Mesa Road now has a speed limit of 35 miles an hour, having gone from 25. And I personally think that's too fast because people walk on Mesa Road, but also I live in one of the streets beyond the Teixeira Ranch where you have to come down to get onto Mesa Road and cars can't see you. And it's just absolutely too fast. And of course, people don't go 35, yeah, right. They go 50. Yeah, right. And when I see particularly, I'm so careful, but I have a gray car and I put my blinkers on like I'm going the opposite direction that I'm going to so people can see me coming from, the seashore. But I see people walking on that narrow road with no place to even jump into. There's no curb, there's no ditch. It's dangerous. And if you're gonna leave the 35 side up there, then just say, but you don't have to go 35. Take it back. So I just hope maybe that you would consider that.
Sure. Setting those speed limits have a protocol that they go through. What we do is we go to DPW, the traffic engineer, and he'll take a look. I can tell you in that particular case, it probably doesn't qualify for a 25 mile an hour zone. There's not enough.
With the roads coming down into it, huh?
It's calculated on number of residents and distance, and nothing would fit into that formula for Bolinas. Yeah.
Can we change it?
But you were saying it was 25, right?
Well, I think it used to be 25.
Yeah, what happens though is when you say we want to check the speed on this road, they're required by state law to do a speed survey if you want to enforce it with radar. And when they do a speed survey, they have to go out and see what people are traveling. And then they take the medium of that, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, take the medium of that, and that's what they set the speed limit as. So in many cases, if you have a 25 mile an hour zone, you think people are traveling too fast, they'll come out and do a speed survey in order to be able to use radar, which is the enforcement tool they like to use, because it stands up well when it's challenged. They do a speed survey and the medium speed is looked at, and then it has to be a number of miles over that before you actually get the violation. In some cases, I think it's 5, is that right?
It's usually around 8.
Okay.
Which shocks people, but even most students, it's 35. The courts will recognize 43 and above. So even if, yes, 35 may seem too fast, that can change on road conditions and so forth, weather related, but typically it's about 8 miles per hour over. And I can address the other part. I can help out on that. We have 2 trailers available, one through the county, one through CHP, the radar trailers. So I can ask the county, it's usually about 30 days out, to put one out, but I can have them haul one out, which is, as long as it's in a good sunny spot, it should stay at least the whole weekend or throughout the week. Then I'll work with CHP, who's been really good partners. They have 2 trailers, and I'll ask them to bring one of them out, especially as it starts getting busier towards the summer. So hopefully we can see more of that. I understand there's only a few of them that have run throughout the entire county, but I'll try to make Mesa Road, I'll ask them to put it on the list.
And I guess my caution is, if I file something with the traffic division, you might get a higher speed. You could get a higher speed when they come out and do the survey. Because
So you
people-
guys said anything.
Yeah. Thank you. And CHP does most of the enforcement on speeding enforcement, so we can have a conversation with the commander too, to make sure it's on their radar screen in terms of more enforcement. Because that's helpful too.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go to the back over here. Hi.
Hi, I'll leave the post office, just many other people, but, the Y where the 2 motorcycle accidents were, is there a plan? I saw something on Nextdoor that something was in motion, but.
Yeah, there's a restoration plan for the Bolinas Lagoon north end that's going to eliminate the cutoff road. And part of that plan is to reconfigure the Highway 1 Bolinas Lima Road configuration, because it's a bad arrangement there. It doesn't meet any current standards. So as part of that project, that intersection is gonna be reconfigured to make it safer. And then also on Olima Bolinas Road, it's gonna get elevated where it floods on that end of the lagoon. But basically what this project, it's a restoration project primarily, but it has some road improvements in it that also benefit the restoration project. And so they're gonna try and free up the water flow there by removing the crossover road, allowing the lagoon to go in and out there and repair and restore the creek coming in from the Bolinas Lima side, and then redo the intersection per Caltrans standards. So hopefully it's gonna get much, much safer, and there'll only be one entrance and one exit at that point. I believe they're finishing up plans. They have funding for construction. And what I just don't know if Caltrans has fully funded their portion, but the restoration part, the county part is funded. And I would say within a year, you're gonna start seeing construction there. So thank you.
I just want to say Horseshoe Hill is a speedway, it's a shortcut, and I don't know how to, whether you put speed bumps or
Yeah.
something, it's a freeway going
Yeah,
into
especially
town.
going downhill. Huh?
Yeah.
I
No,
can-
a lot
I
of
can
blind,
address that as well. CHP has gotten many concerns, probably more on Horseshoe Hill. There is a neighbor up there that allows us to use his driveway to run the radar, so they back into the driveway and do that. That's been the focus for a couple of years. Unfortunately, there's only one CHP officer working out here, sometimes 2 that works the entire area, but Horseshoe Hill has been a focus of theirs for several years now, coming down there.
And the other good news, I think, is for you is that we're increasing the sheriff's presence this summer by adding an officer in Stinson Beach. We're cooperating with CHP actually to bring another patrol officer onto the coast on those long weekends and holiday weekends. Again, they're pretty spread out, but it really makes a difference having this extra person on whenever that is. And you can see the benefits of that just because up and down the whole coast, there's concern about speeding, and having a CHP patrol car or a sheriff car out there and about, it does have an impact on people. So that's good news, and it's in cooperation with the sheriff's office and CHP with a little additional funding from the county. Sorry. Over here, Jenny? Thank you.
Hi, Jenny Pfeiffer here. I would like to talk about the paving of the pathway that our water district has a grant to do that takes us from the Mesa to downtown. And it joins the path that comes from school, so kids can go downtown. ends right at resource recovery. That's as far as the money takes us. And that lets people out in a very dangerous spot. There's no shoulder as you come out. So when kids come out of that path or bicyclists come down, there's a huge ditch there, and then you're on a road, part of the roadway where cars coming into town are still going fast and they haven't slowed down. And so I was hoping that the county could maybe work with the BPUD and the school to do something about getting a pathway that goes from there to the corner where the sidewalk then on this side picks up.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny, for bringing that up. I'm aware of the project. Michelle from the school district actually just reached out to Safe Routes to School. I'm not sure if that's what she wants to talk about or not. I think that's the best or the logical place for a project to come out of, because there's Safe Routes to School funding through TAM, Transportation Authority, Marin. And so in conjunction with the school, that might be a great pathway to do that. So I'll connect with Michelle, and maybe you might want to see if we're all talking about the same project. That would be helpful.
Great.
Yeah. I'm gonna get to the back over here next.
I just want to talk about the internet situation in Bolinas for a minute, and make sure you're totally aware of the current situation and hear what you might be doing to continue to address it. I recently did a deep dive on this for my own purposes. I believe Bolinas is currently covered by 3 different providers: the Horizon fiber optic, the Muir Beach LAN, which is a whole sort of residential network through the air, and then Starlink, Elon Musk's situation. Much of Bolinas is still not covered by hardwired fiber optic, which is really the gold standard and is far superior to any other solution. We're down in Gospel Flats near the school and the Peace Barn. So that entire area, Gospel Flats, up through Horseshoe Hill is still not covered.
And Dogtown.
Sorry?
And Dogtown.
Okay, and Dogtown. Even, I know it's quite expensive to extend that line, even several telephone poles. I think like each telephone pole is like a couple $1,000s. The permitting itself apparently is very expensive. I got the impression that a lot of that is supported though by public monies that are available to Horizon. So, I think for the most basic consumer, internet use, of course, these other options are okay, but Starlink has very low upload speeds, and Muir Beach LAN, I have not been able to make that work for my purposes. So for anything like creative, business, you're really gonna need hardwired fiber optic. And because Bolinas is already, a very low density residential area that is then split between 3 different providers, it makes it more difficult for Horizon to have like a successful business model here. And so I want everyone to be very aware that the Horizon is dramatically superior to the others just as consumers. And also their lines, talking to their engineer, their lines are quite future-proofed. So, as the higher bandwidth becomes available, their existing lines will already handle that into the future. And I think it will become more and more clear to everyone over the years that is going to be a necessary thing. So, but I think, at least for my personal emphasis, that whole corridor into town, Gospel Flats through Horseshoe Hill, is still not covered. And I'm wondering what you can do, if you're aware of that, and what you can do to help improve that, because it's a very frustrating point for me right now.
Can I add on to that?
And Wendy can add on to that. So.
I know Dennis has heard me over a while now about this, but actually Dogtown has none of those options. Some people have Starlink, and some people don't have access to that. Horizon is not like, they literally laugh in my face every time I've asked, what about Dogtown? And they laugh at me because we're nowhere near in their radar. So it's actually a lot worse past you.
I think if you get on the list for Starlink, they will.
It's expensive. If you have $700 to put out, besides how much it is a month, And not every, and I've actually have surveyed as much as I can, and not everybody even has access, like not everybody's address along Horseshoe Hill and downtown even have access to Starlink even if they wanted it.
Anyway, what can we
Yeah,
do to
so-
extend
so
on the
the-
fiber
the-
optic?
And then to add on to that, the other issue I would like to lump together with that is our cell phone access. There's literally no service where I live,
I
none.
think that's a separate issue. What can we do
But
about the
it's
fiber
connected,
optic?
because at least if you have cell phone service, you have some internet.
Yeah.
If in an emergency, I have zero access to
Okay, well,
anything.
So the good
That's a
news, the
separate
good
question.
news
My
is,
question is, how can
the-
what can we do about it further
Yes,
extending
it's
fiber
okay.
optic?
the good news is that Marin has a strategic digital plan that we just developed, which puts us in a good position to get the grant funding that's becoming available both at the state and the federal level. The other good news is that we got in the state's digital plan, we got Highway 1 added for middle mile throughout Marin. So it's gonna be middle mile, hardwire, broadband, the whole length of Highway 1. Why is that important? Because that leads to the last mile, which is to your home, the connection to your home with high quality internet. And that's the problem around broadband internet, whatever you wanna call it. And I just add that you do have another server here in Bolinas that is really poor quality, as I understand it, because I've had it myself, is AT&T.
Yeah.
But that's another topic. So the good news is it's all gonna change. Everyone's gonna have high quality internet at a reasonable cost, because that's really the goal of the county and the state and the federal government. And there's a lot of money gonna be put into that. You're kind of fortunate in Bolinas that you have providers that are here already, because we have some communities that don't have providers even in the communities. You have Verizon, you have Muir Beach Land, which is taken over from Inyo, who got a grant from the CPUC to actually hardwire Bolinas. And they had financial trouble, and they sold that to Mouse Bay, I say to Mouse Bay because that's what they call themselves up north, Muir Beach Land, who took over that grant process to bring internet as best they could with the system they had. What they're missing is that middle mile, that dark fiber sometimes it's referred
Can you explain
to.
me why is having fiber optic on Highway 1 gonna help the situation when I already have it 3 telephone poles from my house, and yet I get laughed at by Horizon about extending it to like less than a quarter mile, like a
Yeah,
quarter
and
mile.
see-
Highway 1 is like
Yeah,
5 miles away.
they literally laugh at us.
The CPUC controls the utility companies, and the utility companies make their decisions based on business. It's my understanding that Horizon makes their own choices about where they run their high-speed internet. And they've chosen to serve the downtown of Bolinas as a priority, and that whether they'll end up serving beyond that, I don't know the answer. That's their question and their business decision. What we're trying to create is a situation where we have the middle mile owned by government or some entity like government, where we can deal with all the providers to allow them to access our system so that nobody dominates it and no one has control over it. They may control the last mile, but that may even be in partnerships with a public entity or government too. We're trying to extend the system so that everyone has good quality at a reasonable price. And as you explained, you can get good quality now in some locations, and it's my understanding, if you want to pay enough, you can get it at some point. But it's really, really expensive, and so that's what we're attempting to do through this digital strategic plan, through government funding, to provide the opportunities for everyone to have high-quality internet. We also work with the school district, and Jenny knows this, to do this Stinson Bolinas connectivity program, where we identified kids who were at school during COVID that weren't able to do their homework at home. And we did a variety of things, working with Horizon, Muir Beach Land, and we may even have some Starlink, I'm not sure, we do up north, where they just, no one else could serve them but Starlink. And so we actually bought into that for them, and they're getting free internet. I think that's gonna run for another year or two, it's funded. But again, those are the types of things we're doing, doesn't directly affect
How
you.
can we get, how can we get fiber optic on Horseshoe Hill and Gospel Flats? It doesn't seem quite related to bringing it all down Highway 1.
So I've talked to the providers about Dogtown. One's interested. They asked me to get a number of residents that are interested in the service for Muir Beach Land. and they would come out and figure out if they could serve it in some way.
I've
And
had
so-
many discussions with Muir Beach Land, and I've tested it on many things.
Yeah,
It
they
just
may not be
doesn't
the right
work for
service
a
for
lot
you.
of applications.
Yeah.
It's very finicky. You're going between many different houses. It's really nothing compared to a hardwired.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. That's the preferred, is hardwire.
Is there public money we can, tap into to extend the horizon, help Verizon extend down that corridor through the entry to town and up Horseshoe Hill?
There is, if Verizon chooses to apply for it. When INYO got the grants for Bolinas, Verizon didn't feel like they were in a position to apply for those grants to do the service in Bolinas. Now, so that's a business decision. They're a private company. They answered to the CPUC. INYO at the time was doing it all over Northern California and getting grants to do it. And they struggled. They ran into financial trouble because it was costing them a lot more money than they thought to do the installations. And so they ended up selling off pieces. And the CPUC, because they were interested in trying to get this done, allowed them to actually sell off pieces and transfer to the government money. And so Tomales Bay Land actually had, or Muir Beach Land, had government money to actually come and serve Bolinas. And again, it just was a...
Well, from my perspective, that is long-term a negative, because even like people at Verizon are telling me, it's becoming more difficult for them to provide internet through areas of Bolinas when the market is fragmented
Yeah.
through these 3 service providers, and a lot of people, I think, don't want to switch to Horizon because they don't realize that is a much better solution long-term.
Yeah.
So I have my hand up on another topic, but I just want to weigh in on Annie, for those of you who don't know me. And I'll just say that I think that while I understand you have a very specific concern and certainly can empathize, I think if we do take sort of that broader picture approach to what's at stake for the whole community, it might actually help to get you as well as you there. Because I think that those of us who attended the BPED meeting this week heard from the folks who you're partnering with at the school who've done a phenomenal job in actually extending to 95% of eligible families or something. I might be getting that wrong. It was a shockingly admirable statistic in terms of the work that
What was
they've
shocking was
done.
the number of families who didn't have really hardly any internet to start with, yeah.
The number of families that now have been served, so
Yeah.
an unmitigated success, right? But what they communicated was, they're volunteers who are wearing down, looking for additional support. Maybe we'll find some here, people who have knowledge, I don't know. But they also expressed a desire to see how can they expand that to other members of our community who may not have school-age children. And we're in a community where 75% of our full-time residents are low income. So there are a lot of folks in this community who are low income, for whom Starlink is probably never going to be an option without some support, right? And so my question to you, which supports your need, maybe as well as yours, is how are you going to address the equity issue that members of our community face by not being able to have that last mile met? You may not have an answer today, but I know you're the one who will
The
listen.
general answer is, by being involved in the government taking control of some of this, we're gonna drive down the cost and not let AT&T or any other entity take advantage of people. There's all kinds of low-income programs for people who need to get internet and can't afford it. Unfortunately, the quality is really bad, or the level of service is really bad. But there are a lot other opportunities. So we wanna bridge that gap, bring the affordability down to the point where everyone can afford it. And we think we can do that by participating in owning the middle mile and controlling who taps into it. So we actually control the utility companies and be in partners with them rather than them being in control of us. But that's really the answer. I don't want to spend too much more time on this subject,
This is
but
about landlines disappearing, and I don't have a cell phone, and I have terrible internet. I
Yeah.
have AT&T, so
Yeah.
how can we save the landline?
So the-
AT&T is specifically trying to get rid of them.
That's
And
right.
they also throw us under VoIP without notice or without consent, and it stinks.
Yeah, so the landline issue is really, again, an AT&T business model. They want to get away from the landline issue. Too expensive for them to maintain the they're not maintaining them.
No.
And it's getting worse and worse, and they want to move away from that model. most of us have gone probably to cell phones. And the good news is that the providers are looking at a lot of new sites for cell towers, including, I just learned a week and a half ago before it came out in the paper that the Catholic Church in Olima's slated in permit for a cell tower that AT&T is applying for, because it's a DID zone for them. There's another site north of Point Reyes Station. So it's a long process for them to go through this, and they're really cautious in Marin, because there's been a lot of pushback about cell towers and the potential impacts, health impacts of 5G and cell towers and where you are, a whole nother discussion. But the good news is they're gonna start moving forward, because I think the public sentiment about cell towers is changing because of the need to have emergency access for cell phones. And so that's changing the perspective a little bit, and I think it's allowing us all to think about the trade-off between a cell tower being in your neighborhood versus not being able to use your phone in an extreme emergency, or in some cases get an alert on your phone that you need to evacuate. So I think.
And as we've seen in the last years of fires, sometimes that cell system is the first to go down. The answer is to not get rid of landlines.
Yeah, and
That's
fortunately,
not
the
the
state has adopted new laws requiring them to have a certain amount of backup. I think it's 72 hours now. So every new installation is going to have at least 72 hours of backup. But again, it complicates things, because in their permit processes, in order for them to get 72 hours of backup, they almost always have to have a generator on that location too. So there's fuel, it just complicates the process, but I think they're dedicated to make this happen because of the opinion of people who has started to change since the North Bay fires about the benefit of cell towers versus emergency use of your cell phone. So I think that's just an important transition, and they have several on the coast that they're planning to apply for. They've applied for 2 up in, one north of Point Reyes and one in Olima that I'm aware of currently that's in the planning process. So, I just wanted to announce that Benita McLaren joined us, who is the Director of Health and Human Services. So welcome, Benita. Thank you for coming, appreciate it. So Annie, I think, okay.
Landline.
Yeah.
Cause my cell phone doesn't work here and blah, 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 it's a cheapo, burner, they call it. I have an iPhone somewhere, but anyway, it works perfectly in Stinson, so AT&T turned off my landline, cause I was 45 days late paying my bill, but I still think I can call 911 if I need to on my landline. And what's wrong with landlines?
It's just.
In an emergency, if you have a landline, you're in better shape than an earthquake, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just their business model, and because they're not maintaining their hardwires in the road and coming into your house. What I'm saying is,
two landline plugs in my house.
So, but what's happening is they're not maintaining the infrastructure because they want to move away from landlines. And so eventually there's gonna be no infrastructure there even for the 911 calls. That's,
AT&T
yeah.
still comes
See,
to my house and it works.
Public Utilities Commission is the one that controls what AT&T does, and they're in San Francisco, and they welcome comments, about this stuff. 'Cause that's how they make policy. They're in charge of policy, dealing with all these private entities. Yeah. Yeah. Annie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I promised this wasn't a plan. I see Benita's just walked in, but my plan was to stand up and actually say thank you to you, and now I get to say thank you to you also, Benita, because I'm gonna embarrass you, Karen. She hates this. But we cannot thank you enough for giving us Karen Gately. I think that the number of people who are touched by her is just growing by the day. And the truth is, when you started that pilot septic program and you guys stood up and you said, we'll see how this goes, and people take up the need, people have taken up the need and are telling their friends and their family, and the need's growing. And the truth is, we need her full time. We need her just for Stinson and Bolinas, because the need is here. And what you have been able to do for our community, I'm gonna cry, but you're gonna cry. I always cry in these things, I'm sorry folks. I just wanna say it's been nothing short of transformational to watch the impact of having somebody who cares and shows up and doesn't give up on people. And it's also been nothing short of transformational for the community center, for the BCLT, for, I imagine, the fire department, to have the partnership that we have had in other forms, but now gonna have in a really different form. So please consider giving her to us full time. We don't want to share.
And thank you for mentioning that, because I want to thank Karen too for just being part of our community. You know, and the revigorated Health and Human Service Center in Point Reyes Station is really an important part of this, something that we've been working on with Benita and her staff. And it's just amazing to see the transition there. We're gonna start very soon. One of my aides is gonna be there every Monday to meet people and talk with people and set up appointments. Many other departments in the county are thinking about making that hoteling there sometime during the week. Legal aid is looking at being there 2 or 3 days a week in the future, near future, I think. So it's really exciting to see that huge investment that the county made several years ago now being truly used. And I know it's not easy for many people in Southern Marin to get to Point Reyes Station, but I think you prefer that trip than going to Santa Fe probably in the Eastern Corridor. So that's where it really works for us, because it works for the whole coast being in Point Reyes, extending from Dillon's Beach to the Muir Beach, really. Even Muir Beach likes to come up there, although they have the opportunity to go to the southern portion over to Marin City or to Santa Fe. So I just want to thank you for being part of that transition, Karen. Thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing before I throw you my soft, medium, hardball question? My other thank you is to Fernando, because having a member of your staff that's bilingual, that is as present and, you know, committed and earnest, I think, and intelligent, I could go on and on, but having a member of your staff who's shown up through so many difficult conversations with members of our community who I am not an official representative of, but I just don't see them here again today. So I'm gonna say that there are a lot of Latina members of our community who have really grown to trust you, Fernando, and that opportunity to have access to civic engagement and government, I think it's something that we're working. You know, Will's got a great translation service that he's gonna be bringing in, so we're all working together to make a more inclusive community, but you've already made significant inroads, so thank you, Fernando, and I don't know if all members of our community are aware of that. My question is, do you wanna?
I'm gonna have you wait on the, thank you though, I'm gonna have you wait on your question. I'm gonna go to someone else first.
You got it.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Maybe some others on the same subject, but I wonder what the plan is of the county of dealing with the eucalyptus trees in its right of way, because they are falling down. One fell down last night parallel to the path around the sewer ponds.
Yeah.
One crashed on Tuesday parallel to Terrace Avenue. There's another one on Terrace Avenue that's leaning precipitously, and it's already forming a mini speed bump. It's gonna tear up Terrace Avenue, which means Terrace Avenue will be useless for several weeks. There are other examples around Bolinas, like even across the street from me. 10 days ago, the county, as they have for the last 50 years, dug out the drainage ditch with this eucalyptus tree taking up 2/3 of the drainage. So they've been digging around it now for 50 years. And it's goes way over, arches way over the road, way over the power lines. PG&E comes by every year or two and snips a few little twigs. If it falls on my house. So I'm wondering what the county's plan is.
So in general, if you see a tree, you have a tree that you think is a problem tree or potentially a danger, you should reach out to our office and tell us about it. And you also can go on the DPW.
Yeah, I've talked to DPW.
But go on their website and actually enter it in there as an issue, because then you get a tracking number and stuff, and that's a little easier to see who's following up and what's going on. But that's the first step, is to get them out, and then if they deem it's a danger, they'll get a tree expert to look at it. And if it is truly a danger, that someone says it's the risk of falling and hurting someone, they'll remove it. We do it all the time. It is a process, and a lot of times people are disappointed because the arborist may say, no, we don't think it is a danger. You know, it's not anything unusual, and usually people who live next to them disagree with that because they see the risk. But we have to do it on a risk basis, and we count on experts to tell us about that. You know, is the tree dying? What's going on with the tree? Those sorts of things.
All these older trees are diseased.
And most of the eucalyptus are really old at the end of their life. I know that, yeah. And the other conditions play into it. You know, have other trees around that come down that might expose it more to the wind. You know, the last storms we had exposed us a lot to those sorts of things. But I'm gonna let John talk about the project we are working on, which is part of what you're talking about. It's part of what you're talking about, up around Mesa Road and stuff. So John, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Dennis. And I want to say, through this 2.5-year process, 2.5 years and counting, Dennis has been a bright light of hope at the end of a very dark and cold and scary bureaucratic tunnel. A quick review, we are the Bolinas Eucalyptus Project. We propose a 11.9 acre restoration program. Now, the restoration, which is the real prize here, which is the into future generations and forever, as long as this place exists, can't start without removing these aforementioned diseased, ailing, dying, literally falling by the day eucalyptus trees. So the tree removal comes with all kinds of high hurdles to hop, but the goal is something that will be spectacular. It'll be state-of-the-science restoration. It will have a lot of thought behind the planting, the whole spacing, appropriate plants for appropriate exposures. You have wetlands down here, and there'll be willows and appropriate other wetland plants. We have Judith Lowry as our guide for native plant placement and selection. And it'll be something that Bolinas can be proud of, and there's other projects going around in the Bay Area that we can learn from. A lot of thought will go into that. Okay, so that's what we're after there. 7.6 of those 11.9 acres are on BPUD land, and that's where things get a bit more complicated. 1.4 acres of that 11.9 is road surface overhung by dangerous eucalyptus branches. So, right now today, our obstacle, our main stumbling block, is coming from the Monarch Coalition, and we are as interested in and sympathetic to the plight of the monarch as anyone could be. But we're not tunnel vision monarch, we're multi-butterfly concern and all wildlife. The biodiversity that could exist on these 11.9 acres, except for the 1.4 that's a roadway, will be far more diverse and rich. So we were recommended to use a particular environmental consulting firm, and I'm not going to use their name, but it has not gone well. They first billed us, they started work last April of 2022. We got our first invoice in May, and months and months and months went by. We heard nothing from them. And so in February this year, we started saying, hey, like, where are you at? What's happening here? And they were evasive, they were deflective, they were not forthcoming. It was a kind of a frustration. Finally, they sent us a condensed report, which ultimately was just a list of all the potential environmental hurdles that could be in the way. They work under this overlay system whereby you look at this chunk of earth, basically from Stinson Beach to Palomar, and every ESHA, which henceforth we shall refer to, every environmentally sensitive habitat area, which we will refer to as ESHAs, is on this map. And so now they're examining your 11.9 acres, seeing if they can draw in any of these ESHAs and plot them in your project. There is a legitimate ESHA at the lower end of the job along Lima Bolinas. It's a wetland, and it would be a spectacular wetland if you remove the approximately 200 trees in that part of the job that suck up tremendous amounts of water when the sun is shining and they're transpiring off into the atmosphere. You replace those with willows, which are as fire resistant, if not fireproof, as any form of vegetation. So now you have a righteous wetland that's a fire resilient little patch of the job. So that's legit. But the butterfly, they are wanting to declare an ESHA based on a overwintering roosting site. As I said week before last here at the Bow Civic meeting, which is every second Wednesday of each month, please come. I went through a thing with slides and whatnot. Long story short, of all the butterflies counted on the Bolinas Peninsula since 1997 by the Xerxes Society, and that's an all-volunteer group, like the Bolinas Eucalyptus Project. We are all volunteer, nobody's getting paid, and we have thousands, I kid you not, thousands of man and woman hours into this. So the Xerxes monitored basically 6 active sites over these many, many years, since 1997, and out of all the counts, 1.3% of the butterflies counted in Bolinas were counted in and around our job site. For that, this environmental consulting firm has decided to declare an ESHA, but not just an ESHA, a capital E ESHA, which apparently in the environmental world, that capital E is a killer, baby. I mean, you don't mess with the capital E. So we had a meeting with Sean Kinnings, who's a liaison basically between the Eucalyptus Project, the county, and the environmentalists. And frankly, that whole little triangle is a little too intimate for my liking, but Sean explained the overlay concept and kind of shucked and jived his way through our meeting, but he was helpful, and I thought, we might get some rational thinking to these environmentalists through Sean. We get a letter the next day. First, I sent him an email. I say, thank you, Sean, very much for your time, and the whole overlay really helps us understand why this is taking forever to get very little done. And he came back with, hey, thanks for that. Talked to, we're gonna call him Sam from the environmental company, and Sam said that there is indeed an overwintering roost in the eucalyptus group that would qualify for uppercase ESHA designation. Furthermore, sounds like mitigation for monarch habitat removal is not that simple and may even rise to significant impact. Well, there's a buzzkill, and it just blew us away. So that's where we're at, and we are going 2 more minutes. Anyway, we're gonna get consultants for the consultants. Last thing, there's 4 trees laying on the BPUD land. BPUD is kind of screwed right now. They had 3 emergencies today that they're working on. And it turns out there's 28 trees laying on our job. 4 of them came from the north side of Mesa Road. According to this survey that the county did for us, so we would have a little clarity on where the trees, whose trees are whose. Well, the 4 that fell this winter, this way, across Mesa Road, are all on county easement. And, it's been a very cool spring with a lot of fog and not much heat. God help us if we have a heat wave.
I thought this was tomorrow at Emberstop, but evidently it's...
These leaves were picked yesterday randomly by an agent of mine off the fallen trees.
John, don't do that.
I have a bucket of water, easy. Look at that. That's
good.
If you had 6 million of these burning at once, you got a problem.
Yeah,
So
then
Dennis, if I have a question for you.
It's not going out.
It's in water, it's fine. Calm down, people. Dennis, is there any reason why a county crew cannot be on that property Monday morning and deal with this? Because if somebody flicks the cigarette butt or a power line snaps, you have probably 60,000 pounds of fine fuel that's demonstrably flammable. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and I think what he's illustrating is the difficulty sometimes with dealing with these issues because we're in the coastal zone. And it's not technically deemed an emergency by most of the standards that we've been able to calculate. And so that's why we're asking as a first step, the environmental review. And that's because that will determine what the next steps are. And it could include a coastal permit. We're not sure yet. It looks like it might go there. So all these things are complicated. But I think the important thing is, and I'll bring this up with DPW, you know, again, there's steps they go through to make sure that it's their tree, it's in their right of way. Obviously, there's no danger now because they're down, but there's a danger from what's laying there. So I'll have them look at that. But I think you can understand this. We can't spend public funds on private property, so we have to first determine is it our property that we asked to work on, and the same would be your tree. They'd go out and look at it for condition, but one of the things they'd look at, is it in the county right of way or is it on private property? And even if it's on private property, if it's likely to fall on the roadway, they actually can take that action and remove the tree because they're protecting the public right of way at that point, and they can spend money on that. But if it's on your property or a private property owner, and it may be a dead and dying tree, if it's not, they're not allowed to spend public funds on, they're not gonna be able to help you. Now, there are other ways that we can get some help to you sometimes with trees that are fire dangerous, and this is something that John and I have already looked at through the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. That's the type of work they do, is remove fire risk, fire trees that might cause fire risk. And that's through the Bolinas Fire District too, which is a partner in that JPA. So a lot of challenges. We'll get through it. I hope that you have many conversations with Will and his group, his bi-monthly group, because at the end of the day, if we go through a permit process, it's gonna take community help to get this through that process. And everyone has a right to have a say. And I do know there are some people that are concerned about the project. And so we have to balance all that. But the community coming together is really helpful to help move a permit to some conclusion so we can get some of this work done. Second question, but I'll allow you to ask it.
Yeah. There's more, okay, there's been a lot of power outages because of these falling trees. In fact, I find out this morning that's gonna cost me $1,600 to replace the controller on my solar water heater because of the power surge. The engineer thinks from PG&E turning on and trees severing the power, and then PG&E fixing and then the surge. So it's more than just fire.
Yeah,
If
no, I
people
get
are
it.
talking about connectivity.
Sure.
Eucalyptus trees do wonders in severing connectivity.
You may know this, there's a claim process through PG&E. There's a claim process through PG&E if you've been damaged by something that happens. I had a surge in my house several years ago that burnt up a bunch of things, and including check your GFIs, because those surges kill your GFIs, so you think you have protection, and they're no longer working because the power surge killed them. And PG&E has a claim process. You tell them what the cost is, and they may negotiate it, they may just pay it, but they do have a process, and if they can be identified as the source of your problem, you might need your solar guy to say, this is what I think happened, and it was this surge this day, and they know when they have.
He doesn't know which day.
Yeah, okay, well, and PG&E knows when they have issues, so.
That's
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a process you can go through. So, I wanna go to the post office,
Yes.
How about that?
What a way.
I've been waiting for the question.
Miles away.
Waiting for the question. So I wish I could tell you your post office is gonna be back next week, tomorrow. But I can't tell you that. And it's been probably one of the most frustrating subjects that I've had to deal with since I've been in office, including my staff, because it's like talking to the wall over here sometimes, talking to a federal agency that we have no control over. So we've been depending on Congressmember Huffman's office to take the lead on this, and we've been filtering all the comments, all our opinions through him. Early on, we coordinated the Mesa Park Board with Huffman's office to see if there was a proposal that we could put together for the post office to be even temporarily up there. That didn't go anywhere. But what I can tell you, and I think there's people in the room that probably can be more accurate than me, I just got off a call with Jenny Callaway from the Congressman's office, is that there was a proposal made this week that will help solve the problem to the post office. Very sound proposal, very thorough, went into great detail. And the congressman sent a letter on the 16th supporting the proposal to higher up in the post office, because quite honestly, we're not getting good results out of the local post office administration. And so we're hopeful that they can work their way through this. They're very methodical in how they do things. And they can't go to the step 3 without totally working through step 2 and realizing it works or doesn't work. But so that's happening right now, and next week on Monday, we're gonna send a letter from my office supporting the project, along with Congressman Huffman's office. The other thing that's going on, and again, you all been asked, do you want home delivery? The latest I heard today was out of 400 people who signed up for that, approximately 200 are eligible under their program. So there's like 200 that are in a little bit of Never Never Land. They can't actually physically deliver to them. And I think they're trying to do some proposal around that. What we'd like them to do is jump to the other proposal and skip this middle one. I don't know if that can happen because they need to get through their little steps. But I really apologize because it really has been difficult on you, I know. We told them Olema wouldn't work because it floods, and next week it flooded. I get my mail there, I know. How often we have to go to Point Reyes to get our mail. And so, again, I feel for you because it's been frustrating for you. Thank you to the community members that have taken this on, though, because that's what's gonna make this successful. As the congressman is able to move this up the ladder, and they're gonna see that this is a well thought out proposal and done by the community, I'm pretty sure they're gonna take it because they have no other alternatives. I don't know if they even know how difficult it is to find another location in this community. We all realize it because we live here, that it just don't have a vacant space in many of our communities to even think about a post office. So again, we're just hopeful, and thank you for your patience. And I know Jenny's been working on this in particular with a group of people, and I really thank them for what they've been doing because it really means a lot more when it comes from the community and you're serious about it. And I think you have an event tomorrow?
Well, there is a post office rally that John Borg is hosting.
Okay, John's doing.
Yeah, John's doing that, and then everyone should attend.
Tomorrow, so
There's
you
announcements.
might do that
And
before
Wendy.
the Ember Stomp, or after, in between. Anyway, so that's the latest as of just like an hour before I came here. I talked to Jenny Callaway. We've been in constant communication with her, and everyone wants to help, but Caltrans and Post Office are two agencies that don't get influenced, quite honestly, by politicians very much because they're totally independent, and you really only deal with them through their budget. That's how you can control them, and naturally that doesn't happen every day, every month. So, we're really hopeful with the Congress members.
What is a proposal?
I can speak.
So the proposal is, ironically, I think I can share this, because I read it in an email to me, and everything you send in email is public information, by the way. Is that to do a temporary or permanent post office up at Mesa Park, which was one of the original ideas that you all thought about, that we thought about, that the board's been on, the Mesa board's been on board with, DPUD's been on board with since this all happened. But it's taken this long to get to this, and you had to do the thorough proposal, even to get it to this point, because they weren't working on it yet, because they hadn't worked through all their other steps that they needed to go through. So hopefully that's better news. I know it's not good news, and I think you had some photos in this proposal that really, really struck me as important for them to see. Two of them were the flooding Olema post office, and the third was the tables outside the Stinson post office with all your mail sitting on them. So I think that's government doesn't like those kind of photos going public, and so I think I'm encouraged that we're gonna see something happen here. It will take a while, because again, the post office has to move through this process of establishing the portables. They need power. We've actually already researched the power for them because we knew they weren't gonna do it. So I got in contact with some of my old contacts in PG&E and worked out how they could get power and told them how to do it. But they have to go through all those steps still if they decide to make an agreement with Mesa Park via the Bolinas Community Land Trust. All right? Yeah, in the back.
Via the BPUD, not the land trust, the BPUD.
I'm sorry, did I say Land Trust?
Yeah.
Mesa Park and BPUD, so. Yeah.
Would they be basically trailer type buildings?
I think the proposal is use mobile offices, trailers, yeah. And again, those, I think they end up being like for 10 years on school properties, they're allowed to, before they need to at least change them out. So I think it's a short-term, long-term thing, and I know there's maybe some opportunities with the land trust project across the street, that there's some commercial space there, but I don't know if that's even possible.
I have an unfortunate update on that. We got further down
Sorry.
the road in terms of the square footage, and the square footage that's planned for that commercial space, if it does go to fruition, is too small.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the BPUD is, again, the better option.
Very good, thank you.
And just to speak to the details of the plan, they are available. I'm going to turn the camera on myself. They are available at the Bolinas Civic Group's website. It was presented in the April community meeting, which is available on YouTube to watch. So all of the details are all there, and they have not changed since that. Well, there's minor details that have changed, but not the basic function. And we have drawings and other that are on the website as well that I can provide. But you can go get them. It's all there, out there in the world.
Okay. David, want to go to you, and then we'll come to you, okay?
In addition to all the other fun things that have happened after COVID, the short-term rentals really took a peak, and they don't appear, without any intervention, to being near their peak yet. And so what we're seeing, I think, in our communities in West Marin, I can speak for Bolinas, is that residential properties have now been taken by investors, whether they're LLCs, private equity firms, or just individuals who don't live here but buy one or two and immediately service the mortgage with pretty high, in some cases, exorbitant rental fees, which then keeps regular people, the working class and others, they can't compete with that because they don't have that rental income to service a high mortgage. And we've seen in our community so many people have left the community because there's no place to rent. And Dennis, you've been working with us, and Kathleen, you have too, thank you. There's a group, 10 of us in West Marin, 2 from Inverness Park. They coincidentally are clam board members. 3 from Point Reyes Station. 1, Jorge Martinez, grew up on one of the ranches. Chris Harrington and Harriet Moss, and Stinson Beach, Don Smith, me, David Kimball, Layla Monroe, and Owen McMillan from Bolinas have been working diligently, and Kathleen's been very helpful with the planner. She's a planner from community development. But I didn't want this meeting to go by without us having a conversation about it and how acute it has been for the community to watch the school population drop dramatically over the years, to see the supply of people that can volunteer to be on school boards, fire boards, community boards, and the BPUD boards shrinking. And in the place of that, commercial enterprise now has co-opted these residential properties and is seeking capital gain at the cost of social or community gain. And we want to find a different balance point and bring it back. So I want to make sure that we talk about that today, and the people in the audience that have concerns about it speak to that. And Dennis, you're aware of this because you met with us last week, and thank you for that. It was a very helpful meeting. And Kathleen's been really great to coordinate with us. So.
I'm gonna let Kathleen in a minute give you an update on scheduling things going on. But what David's referring to, for those that don't know, is I've been hearing for a couple years now about how our communities are getting hollowed out, that our fire department's having a really hard time just getting volunteers, that our school systems are struggling because of low student counts, not being able to attract teachers. And it all goes, like most things, it all goes back to housing in some way and the availability of housing. And so what's going on at the county is we decided in West Marin, in Measure W district, which is a special area of the county where most of the short-term rentals are, to put a moratorium on. And the moratorium lasts till next May. It's basically a 2-year moratorium. And in that time, we want to take a deep breath and stop any new short-term rentals from being developed until we have time to take that deep breath, have community conversations, and hear what the proper direction would be for regulation. What's the balance that communities want? What's the balance that in general we want as a population? Because I don't think any of us, I equate this, we used to have these conversations in Point Reyes about, would anyone like the whole community, downtown village, to be t-shirt shops serving visitors? No. So likewise, I equate it to that. No one wants the whole town to be short-term rentals because suddenly no one will be living here, no one will be working here, it'd be really difficult, and our communities would change forever. So that's kind of the conversation. And what I'm trying to focus people on is we already have a situation that I believe, at least temporarily, is stalled. But we have over 550, give or take, short-term rentals throughout West Marin. The most in, remember we're talking about just unincorporated Marin County. I think we have about 700 in the entire unincorporated county. So 80% of them are in West Marin, so it really impacts us. And we know why, because we live in the most beautiful place in the world probably, and it attracts people from all over the world, the Bay Area. You know, we're an attraction, and we deal with that every day, every weekend that we live here. But we've got to be able to get to a point to find strike that balance. What's the proper balance for all this? We know we can't get away from being a visitor-serving community. The visitors are going to need to come here. But part of that discussion is, what's the balance between community and visitors? And that's the same discussion around short-term rental. What's that balance? And so that's what we're into right now, 12, 14 months into it. I guess, yeah, 12 months at least, yeah. Of trying to determine what that looks like, what regulations in the future we want to develop. And then we want to be able to develop those regulations, obviously get public input, take them to our planning commission, take them to our board, and get a coastal permit by May of next year. That's our goal. And so that's the schedule we're on. We love your comments. We want your input. As I said before, str@marincounty.org. You can write an email to that. That goes to Kathleen, who is managing the county's approach to this and the regulation potential. And so she'll see all those emails and they'll get included. We also are having opportunity for focus groups. And I think Kathleen is in the middle of choosing those groups. We had a survey where 2,400 approximate people responded to the survey, and at the bottom of it, they told us if they wanted to be on a focus group, so that's how we're developing the focus group. Kathleen, do you want to add anything about schedule? I know there's a June date coming up.
Yeah, I would say that we had over 500 people express interest in participating in focus groups, so we won't be meeting with everybody. But again, yeah, I am here to talk one-on-one. I'm interested in conducting interviews with people. If there are any business owners that are interested in talking to us as well, I think that we're curious to hear from them. They have very different perspectives and like Dennis noted, like do rely on tourists and visitors, but also serve their community at the same time, and also may live or want to live in a community. It's hard to live there, so I'll put that out there. If there's any business people, we're definitely looking for some more of you to talk to. And then June 12th, we will be having a planning commission workshop. The planning commission will be treated similar to our focus groups and facilitated group conversations, and that we're going to bring forward the results of the survey and really start to talk about the feedback we've received, the direction we can take regulations, and really just understanding how people use their properties. There's different ways that some folks, rely on short-term rentals for maintaining their homes or being able to live in the community. So we definitely want to continue to hear from people, get feedback on that, and provide that public meeting opportunity on June 12th. So that'll be our next public meeting about this. We're hoping to bring forward regulations, draft regulations, at the end of July, beginning of August, and that will be open for about a month for public comment. We'll host public meetings as well. They'll be over Zoom so everyone can attend to ask questions about the regulations, make their own suggestions and recommendations. So this summer there's going to be a lot of opportunity for involvement, bringing the regulations back again to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors in the fall to be able to submit to the Coastal Commission by the end of the year. And the Coastal Commission is involved in this work already. We're meeting with them monthly. We really want to make sure that they're okay with the regulations that we put forward so that when we get to that point where we submit to them, that we're not having to start over and redo it. So that's something that we have to be cognizant of as well, that we will have to accommodate some level of short-term rentals. And so that's really what we'll be working to figure out.
This conversation is going on up and down the whole coast of California. And there's been regulations that have been adopted in other communities, so we're looking at those. But I think that's encouraging that there have been communities that have moved regulations through the coastal permit process and been successful. Half Moon Bay is the recent one, I believe.
Sorry, where is that June 12th meeting?
June 12th meeting will be at the Civic Center. It's an in-person meeting. So if you are looking for more virtual hybrid meetings, that will be later on this summer. If you can't attend that June 12th meeting, you can submit any public comments prior to the meeting with your feedback. We'll be sharing all public comments with the commission for their consideration.
Kathleen, the website they can go on for information?
Yeah, it's marincounty.org/STR.
Okay.
And again, the email is also str@marincounty.org. So if you're having trouble finding anything, please reach out to me. I'll send you links. I'll give you information that I know. Yeah, happy to.
I know we have.
Excuse me, Danny. If you have signed in here, I can definitely share with you the link for the short-term rentals website on Monday when I'm back to the office. Okay?
So I consider this a very important aspect of this issue. Does this moratorium, is it currently actually preventing new Airbnbs from opening? Because I understand they operate kind of through a loophole.
Well, yes, it legally prevents them from operating. As of May a year ago, we put the moratorium on, and only those that were legally operating were allowed to continue operating, and no new applications were accepted for licensing related to short-term rentals. You have to get a business license in Marin. That's the way we monitor it. And so we have Host Compliance, who is a consultant, who's monitoring the internet all the time and looking for people who are operating out illegally, basically. We did have, because we were going for a 2-year moratorium, we had to give 15 days minimum, and we gave 20 days notice to be safe. During that time, we had 100 people sign up that probably were already operating and may not have been legal, or they at least were thinking they wanted to operate. So we actually added 100 during that time. That sort of tells you what, a little potential out there of numbers of people that might be interested. But right now, you can't establish a new short-term rental in unincorporated Marin because you can't get a business license for it. Okay? Let me go here first, David, and then.
Well, this short-term rental situation is going on everywhere. I spent a long time in Hawaii, Maui specifically, and in on Oahu, because that's where I'm from. And they have taken the bull by the horns there in really regulating the short-term rentals. And and also that anyone who owns property there cannot rent their property for less than 6 months. And it has to be a signed lease situation, so might be some guidelines in some other areas that are totally affected by this situation.
Thank you.
Because it is gone like a wildfire there.
And just to clarify, a short-term rental is something that's classified that you rent for 30 days or less. That's how you classify for a short-term rental. You rent for 31, you're not a short-term rental. That's considered a long-term rental. So, I'm gonna go here, David, and I'll get back to you, and I know there's a question in the back too, so go ahead.
Yes, so are the ones that are existing, short-term rentals, do they become grandfathered in? I mean, you're talking about always from now forward, we're gonna regulate it. What about the ones that exist?
Yeah.
Is there any way to?
Thank you, good question. So, the ones that exist, that needs to be determined whether these regulations will impact them in any way. I have an opinion that if you're existing and you're legal, that you should be allowed to be grandfathered in. And that's my opinion right now. And I would probably support that at some point before the Board of Supervisors. So that's the grandfathering issue to you. And you may, though, even if you're grandfathered in, be required to meet new regulations. We're looking at health and safety, including septic as regulations, because we have a strong belief that if you're doing a short-term rental and you're bringing people into your property, that it should meet certain standards around health and safety, be healthy for them, be safe for them to be there, and we have a lot of situations that doesn't apply. We also think you should have make sure you have a septic system that can handle the excess use in terms of number of people that might be there on a given day. So those are things that we're gonna be looking at. We're also gonna be requiring a lot around emergency preparedness and in terms of that, making sure that your user, your tenant will be knowledgeable about what to do in an emergency. And those are things that are part of the regulatory process that we're gonna require. So even if you're existing grandfathered in short-term rental, you're gonna have to comply with all those things. There may be a little grace period to do it, but all those, because we can't expect everyone in 1 week. It's gonna take us a while if we're gonna do, for example, inspect for health and safety and septic. So there'll be some time to do that. But if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't get your grandfather status ultimately. So that's how it might work. So, not a given, but that's how it might work. So, right here, yeah, sorry. You've been patient, thank you.
So, is there anything at all that the government can help us with dealing with this disaster at the heart of our town called the Waterhouse Building? I mean, what does it take to condemn a building? Is there anything anyone can help us do about this nightmare?
Repeat the question.
What can the government do about the Waterhouse building? And the fact that it's not being maintained, it's not being maintained in a safe position from many people's perspective. We have done inspections. The building department's been out there doing inspections. So we've been looking at it. There is a chance that they might be cited at some point because we have a citation process at the county if they're failing to do things. But the bottom line, the truth is, a private property owner has a lot of rights. And the county process to do anything with the private process is a very, very long lead sort of venture that we go on. And we have found that judges in particular, judges in Marin in particular, are very sympathetic to the private property owner and give them a lot of leeway. So we go through a lot of processes to do something and we get stalled out at the end. So it's always been our approach to try and work with people to get them to do the right thing. We haven't been successful at this point with the landlord. I talked to the attorney myself and said, what are you doing? You have a blight in my community and no one's happy about it. He promised at that point to improve the fencing, to remove the blue tarps, to do a bunch of things, and I don't think any of that's happened yet.
The blue tarps are down.
Oh, okay, so something's happened, good. Anyway, the bottom line is it took, at least I can remember, 15 years to get the Granny building retrofitted through the county public process with the court, and they got judgments and things, and that was the only way that we got that to be done, and it took 15 years. So no one wants to, 15-year process with this. We hope, and I think the community's working on maybe a potential process to figure out what should happen with that building, and maybe some public, meaning the residents' ownership there, or some partnership. We'd love to participate in that, should it come to be. We just can't lead that discussion because we have an enforcement going on with them. And it looks like, again, from a judge would say, you can't be doing enforcement and negotiating to buy it, because it looks like you're trying to drive down the price.
Right.
So I'm being very honest with you. We'll participate if the community can put together a deal on it. But we can't lead that discussion because it's not right for the county to be leading that discussion. So, again, a lot of things have popped up since during COVID and after COVID, and the whole fact the post office moved out of there, and the building next door is disarray is one of those topics that we need to deal with. So I'm gonna go back over here. Could you have short-term rental maybe questions, or did you want to follow up?
It was I think it was already covered,
Okay.
If it's being enforced.
Okay, great. All right,
Dennis, could I just?
David, yeah, you want to follow
I
up?
just wanted to say that anybody that can make time, I think the notice came out this afternoon and today for the Planning Commission short-term rental work, which starts at 1 p.m. on Monday the 12th. If there's any way people can be in that room and make your voice heard, that's an important milestone in this process. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, David. All right, Wendy.
I know there's a lot going on at Stinson Beach area around sea level rise issues, and I'm just wondering, is Bolinas going to be part of all of that that's going on around sea level rise issues?
So, yeah, the short answer is yes. It's actually not in the schedule right now because the decision was made to work with Stinson and Marshall. And one of the reasons was because they're two very different coastlines, and there's different types of approaches to how do you do mitigation or how you do transition from those coastlines. And so they're doing planning and trials and pilots around those two communities, and then they'll get expanded out. With sea level rise and climate change, though, there's so many challenges that we're facing, and unfortunately, there's probably going to be a lot of hard choices that have to be made because some things just won't be affordable. And unfortunately, those are times when we might have to look at retreating versus trying to build something to protect us. My thought is that there's some short steps in between that we probably can get more time, but eventually some of our shorelines will have to retreat from that we won't have any other solutions for. But hopefully that's 50 years out, but I don't know. I can't predict that. But we are actively dealing with it, but I can tell you that the amount of dollars it takes to do this kind of work is really, really expensive. And so we won't have enough money. And you may be seeing some potential bonds at state level or even Bay Area level to deal with sea level rise and climate change, to see if we can do it as a whole Bay Area, 9 Bay Area counties, to put a 1/4-cent sales tax on or put some other fee on to generate a lot of money that we all can draw from around sea level rise, around housing, and around public transit in the next 2 to 4 years. Those opportunities will be on the ballot, and you'll be able to make those choices. And again, but it's a huge, huge challenge for us all. And to get right down to the human impact of it, we're also looking at our most impacted communities too. We're in City, the Canal, and San Rafael, because we're actually better off than they are because they don't have the local capacity to deal with a lot of this. So we're looking at all of those. In the back right there, thank you.
I just wanted to
He's moved.
raise a question. That wasn't on purpose. May I have a?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I wanted to bring up a topic about affordable housing because there's a lot of projects that have been divisive for our community, and there will be more. We were just having a conversation about the Teixeira Ranch project, and you may want to share or not in this forum. But I think that there are a lot of challenging discussions that we have as a community, and a lot of, BCLT is aware that we're not universally supported for the work that we do, even if the mission and affordable housing overall is supported pretty much by everyone.
But there was one project recently that really brought kind of everyone together, and it was one of those projects that felt like, wow, this is really a win. And it was a project where we had the opportunity to purchase a home sort of at or below market that was an opportunity to preserve affordable housing for 13 members of our community. This is the 140 Maple project, and you know, people donated, and it poured in the support for this kind of activity. You know, that this is exactly what people want the BCLT to be doing, and it's exactly, frankly, what we would like to be doing. So it just felt like this win-win-win. But it's expensive to do acquisition rehab. You know this as a contractor. We have a heritage of a lot of buildings that have a lot of non-conforming elements to them here in Bolinas. And so it's not a straightforward path to get something legalized or, you know, up to code. So we submitted for CBDG funds, and that's part of something that we do on a regular basis. And we're just so bummed out. We were just so bummed out, Dennis, when the staff recommendation came back with a $0 allocation for this project. And we understand, you know, I have a meeting coming up with Molly. We appreciate her and Amelia. They do, people don't know. They do a phenomenal job. And I know that they share our goals. And I'll be talking with Molly about how the priorities have shifted and why they're focusing on, you know, fewer larger dollar projects and all the rest. But my heart is just a little broken in 2 weeks into this job or whatever it is, because what I see as the path to, you know, forward in terms of strategic planning for our community and sort of unite us behind these kinds of opportunities feels like it's missing a vital element of county support. So I just want to ask you to remember, you know, the community members who want this kind of work and the organizations that need the county support to do this kind of work. We want you to be part of a win-win-win with us.
And thank you to your organization, CLAM, the San Geronimo Affordable Housing Group that are now the Two Valley Land Trust, and others that have contributed so much to affordable housing in our communities. And the county has been a big partner in all that with the Housing Trust Fund that we've set aside for affordable housing. And we just committed $5 million a year for 5 years to build that to $25 million, which you know you've drawn from before. And then 2 weeks ago, we just put $7.25 million into it from leftover funds from 21-22. So we're really making a statement here. You have to compete for them, you know that, but we compete really well usually in the type of project we're doing. The other thing that I want to mention is Measure W, which is connected to the short-term rental discussion. We added 4% on the TOT in West Marin that comes back to us to support fire and affordable housing. And that's another source of funding that's only available to West Marin. And so, you know, I know you're disappointed. I haven't had a chance to debrief with staff. I know they have rationale why they supported what they did, but I do know that we missed out on this round in West Marin, but we have been successful in the past, and hopefully I can influence them to make sure that we are successful in the future. But there's a lot of dollars being put up by the county to really support affordable housing, and we have wonderful projects going on in West Marin. In my district in particular, we have 230 affordable units being built on the property near San Quentin that the state owns. All affordable, half of them for teachers and school staff and public employees, and the other half affordable. That project got the funding that you wanted, because what we did was we realized that the AMI, the level that's set for affordability, didn't even meet teachers and county workers because they were earning too little. What we did was we're proposing to take the state funding and match it with county funding to buy down the AMI to make it more affordable for the potential tenants there. So I know you would agree with that approach, so I wanted to share that. That's where that money went. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Vinny, did you want to say something? No. Go ahead.
What? Are you
No, it's
calling
okay.
on
You
him or me?
No, you. Go ahead.
So my family, we bought a house here for $18,000 in 1962 and rented it out from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
I applied because I have a bad leg and it's hard to walk downtown. And I don't have a lot of money. I was too low income. Ariane Dar is a friend of mine. I met with her privately. It was off the record. She didn't have to report to her board of directors. But I was too low income to get a place here. And that's because it's not like, I have friends in Nevada and Massachusetts who are, it's a third of your income. If you get $900 Social Security, it's $300. And that's not because they have habitat from you. I mean, it's wonderful, BCLT.
Yeah.
You know what, but it's not technically affordable. When I was told that I didn't make enough money to live in the garage building or the Gibson house, I did cry.
Yeah.
But then Ariane Dar, may she carry on, explained it to me.
Sure.
So when we say affordable housing, I'm wondering what the places that you're talking about building, are they quote, unquote affordable housing? How much do you have to make a year to live there?
So the affordable housing standards, I'll go to Karen in a minute, they're set by the federal government and they're set for each community.
Right.
So because Marin County has such high standards in
Right,
terms
it's
of
the
real
fifth
estate cost, income,
highest
it
income
drives
in
up the
county
cost of
in
the
the world.
area median income, and that's what we go on. And you
Right.
always hear AMI for 20%, 40%, 60%.
Right, right.
And the problem that we discovered recently is exactly what you're saying, is that even at the lowest percentage, many of our lower income communities don't qualify because they don't even earn enough to get to that spot. And that's an issue, and that's why we're attempting to buy down those numbers in certain affordable housing units. And the truth of the matter is we have to create more money to subsidize these projects. We're doing a lot, but it's not enough to meet the low income levels that we need to deal with. Karen, did you want to add something?
I would say the Housing Authority is opening up Section 8.
Section 8, that's correct.
And really trying to help homeless people, which I appreciate. Thank you.
Yeah, no. We've actually housed 650 people since 2018 in
No,
the
I appreciate it.
Housing First Whole Person Care program.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that Shelley and I have been working a lot with our unhoused here in Bolinas and Stinson, and I have been all over West Warren with coordinated entry, and we need vouchers. That's our problem, and it's not just unhoused, it's low income that's getting ready to lose their housing, but we need vouchers.
Yeah.
in
Thank
West
you,
Warren.
Karen.
I just wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, the federal vouchers sort of take care of that problem because you only pay 30% of whatever you earn. And if you earn nothing, you pay nothing. If you earn $100, you pay 30. That's the ratio, and that's why vouchers are so attractive. And the reason they work so well is on the other end, you get paid full rent value for those vouchers from the federal government. So if you're the landlord or owner, you're getting full rent value for your 2 or 3 bedroom unit, and the tenant's only paying 30% for rent. So it's a nice match, but we don't have enough. We don't have enough vouchers. That's the problem. So, yeah. All right, it's about 4:45. We're over a little bit. Anything else today? It's really been nice to see you all, and I'll hang around a few minutes if you have something you want to ask me. Benita, anything you want to say that you heard a lot today? And I know you've heard it all, and this is not new to you. We've been hearing this all over Marin. So.
I just want to say thank you to Supervisor Rodoni, and thank you to the community. We're learning to listen more, and I want to say thank you for your patience and grace as we try to serve you. That's our mission, is to serve you. So thank you for your support.
So I'm going to raise something that may be somewhat controversial. I don't know. I've been a member of the community here for about 10 years. I work mostly in San Francisco, so I'm not here daily. And we had rented our house here for a few years, but we are now back for the moment. I've recently got wind of a project that was a BCLT project that has been proposed on an emergency basis for the a portion of the Teixeira Ranch. And I've just been looking at it and I'm super concerned about it on a number of points. One is that there is the proposal, I mean, like I've lived across the street from that pasture and I know what a mud pot wetland it is whenever it rains. But despite that, there are septics proposed for there, and I just can't see how an environmental, I mean, having gone through an environmental review myself and knowing what's involved, I can't imagine that a 50-person commercial-sized septic could function there during any rainy season. So I'm super concerned about that in what is already declared an established wetland. I'm bothered by on the temporary permit, there are a number of sort of factual statements made that are not factual, among them equating a chicken run with parking lot and mobile home and septic system as though the disturbance of a chicken run is equivalent in any way to that. The claim of there being an existing road to service that, which actually didn't exist, as I've showed Annie photos, that didn't exist. Someone built that road in the last year, less than the last year, and then put it on plans and called it an existing road on an supposedly emergency basis. I'm super concerned about the process that apparently BCLT went through, which is, clearly months in the making, clearly no notice and communication to the community. The site selection, which is in an area that is a sensitive habitat when there are other more disturbed areas effectively adjacent to it. I just don't, as much as I appreciate a lot of the hard work that BCLT does, and I know that you're a new director, if you are on the one hand asking for donations and on the other hand pulling things like that, and I don't mean you personally, I mean the organization, I'm not gonna trust you. I know, bite me one, I'm not gonna trust you again. And that is a trust killer. And I'm very concerned about the commitment to the environment, to preservation of the integrity of the land. I was super supportive of and didn't raise any objection at all when that parcel was considered being developed on, there's that permanent development for multi-unit housing near the firehouse. And I'm disappointed to hear, but apparently that didn't go forward because it didn't pass environmental review. And that is appropriate, disappointing but appropriate. And I just don't like this idea that that same parcel, having been determined to be inappropriate for development, is being a back road gone to force a development under emergency declarations, under something that was obviously planned for many months, but pushed through without a process. And that is extremely troubling to me. And I, by the way, own the house that's directly in front of all of this.
Okay.
And so I'm very directly affected, and I've been followed the purchase of it, I followed the planned development, I talked to that architect when it was happening, I'm aware of some of the stuff, and then to have this sort of sleight of hand is really inappropriate, I think.
Sure. So I'll let Annie talk about specifics if she wants to, because I know she had a large conversation last Wednesday, I think, here in this room about this project, and you may have been here, I'm not sure. But from my perspective and the county's perspective, we have a group of individuals, family, and school children that are living in very bad conditions. And so it's been our goal to find a more suitable location for them to live so that we can keep them in our community and keep them productive part of our community. And that's really been the overriding goal. The determination to make this an emergency permit with CDA's determination, and they looked at all the priorities, all the issues, and they determined it qualified for it. Now, I believe you have 30 days to submit this application to the Coastal Commission, which is a requirement of the emergency permit. And then that process will kick off perhaps something else. But what I can tell you is that from a public health perspective, this is something that we have to do. And I think it's really important for this community to understand that there's not many places for these families and these kids to go. And we really are committed to keeping them in the community for a lot of reasons, but mostly because our school can't afford to lose 16 or 18 kids, and we can't afford to lose many, many workers that do much of the work in our community. And so I think you know that, and that's it.
And I obviously supported the project that was disclosed and worked. I understand,
Sure.
Sally, that I absolutely agree with everything you said.
Okay.
But I don't see how a septic system in a mud pit that is flooded for months of the year is going to function when you've got.
Dennis?
I'm seeing that land.
You know, again, there's many ways to deal with septic. There's a lot of technology that will help septic work. There's even a condition where you can pump the septic tank on a monthly basis or more often basis for an emergency like this. So I don't know if the system's been designed yet. I know there's groundwater.
There's a system that is published in the plans, and that is a permanent, I mean, I'm confused somewhat by the emergency permit, but it's a permanent septic system underneath.
It'll go away at some point.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
The septic, I think, stays.
David, go ahead.
Will the presentation that was made last Wednesday night in this room be available on the Bolinas Civic Group website?
Yeah, I have to apologize to everyone in the community. There was a technical glitch which caused the meeting to not be recorded, which I published that. But I did do a really nice follow-up video, but unfortunately the details of the substance.
I'm David, by the way.
You're David?
Yes. The reason I ask is if you heard that presentation, it would have filled in probably every single point that you've just raised. They were points that the whole community had, and there were very understandable reasons why things weren't able to be in the light of day because of problems with the receivership of the property and so on and so forth. If you had been able to hear that, I think it would have laid to rest every single concern you have, and when it's all said and done, that whole wetland space is cleaner than any of us that have lived in this community have ever seen it. And it's unfortunate that you weren't able to be here because it really, it explained why things felt like they were being done in the back room. And it also explained what the end goal is and what the timeline is that goes with that. And it's if there's a way for you to have somebody explain it to you, it's extremely compelling, and it would allay, I would bet, all of your concerns.
And I really appreciate that, David. I mean, I think that is true for some people, but maybe not all. And I just want to say that, you know, there are people in our community who have concerns. It's not just, at least, yeah, I think that.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I read everything that I could find online. And so if that rational, sensible explanation is available, I have not found it. I've read the reports.
To be able to see
Yeah,
the
I've read the reports. I
Really
saw that there was an event that in a discussion. There, I didn't see information. I read the letters. I read the hearsay news. I read what is available.
I should probably write a summary or record another video with Will, or we should probably find some way to get that information as best as we can out to everyone. I think that the emergency nature is something that I have to defer back to Health and Human Services and CDA. That was not a determination that the BCLT made. So I think it's important to understand the role that the BCLT has, what's in our control, and the data and information that was gathered by other public entities and put through their process that we're working within. So that's a point that I just want to be really clear, whether you believe me today or not, that's okay. I just wanna make sure that we're clear that the emergency was not something that the BCLT created, determined, or is manufacturing. So let's just leave that there for a moment. I do think, though, that it's important for the community to understand that there are going to be concerns that are continually voiced about this project, because there are people who are concerned, and they have a right to be. So I wanna make sure that we don't vilify people who raise those concerns. It's a healthy part of our civic process. I just wanna say thank you for being courageous enough to voice the concern in this public forum, to approach me to start a conversation about your concerns in the way that you did. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure we're gonna be continuing to talk. This is just the first of many discussions that I predict we'll be having, you and others. I know that when I have in the past indicated that I am aware that there might be a group of people are concerned, I get this pushback, like, don't accuse us of coordinating. And the truth is, it's okay. If there is a group of people who are concerned and share the same concerns, find each other, find me. Let's talk in that forum, because it's actually easier to be working with the constituent. I mean, you can speak to this better than I can, but it's actually easier to be working with the constituency who have concerns and aligning the concerns and, sort of trying to find and, make sense of it. There are others who share your concerns. If you haven't found them, let me introduce you, and maybe all of you together, can help us understand what the primary points are and what the requests are. So if there are points where we can address concerns that are, deemed not necessarily legitimate by BCLT, but legitimate by the county and Health and Human Services, we have a pathway to resolve that. So I would just ask that of you. Help me find the constituents so we can work together.
So I'm probably the wrong person because I'm the latest one to the game. I only found out yesterday, and I immediately got my entire day derailed, and I'm like, what? And I did the rabbit hole, right? And read everything I could, and found out about this meeting today, and cut meetings short and rearranged my schedule so I could drive in to be here. And so, I hope that what you've said is correct, David. I hope that what you said is correct, but I will maintain my skepticism for the moment.
You're entitled to that, absolutely. You don't need my permission for that by any means. But I also want to say on the other side, if we're going to ask that we don't vilify people who have concerns, please be kind to your neighbors. At the end of the day, this is all about community. So let's not start lobbing, the words at each other, right? On the other hand, I know there are a lot of people who, before the meeting and especially after the meeting that David mentioned, feel passionate about this project, want to see this go forward, are aware what's at stake, and know that some of the residents who are most impacted by this are the most vulnerable in being able to advocate for themselves because of language barriers, because of fear that the community is gonna do whatever it takes to oust them in order to allay the concerns that are being raised, that they'll be sacrificed in favor of the environment or whatever else, right? So there is an opportunity for allyship that I would ask you to rise to. And if you support this project, and if you want to see it go forward, understanding that you have neighbors who are going to hold our feet to the fire and make sure we do this thing right, and make sure that we've resolved every single angle to the best satisfaction that the county can hold us to and anyone else. So you are free to wholeheartedly support it. This is your moment. And I hope you will, together as a community, help us bring about a project that is the best possible solution we have, and have for a situation that we all can agree is not working. It's not working and it has to change. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming and bringing that to us, and I think you have an open opportunity to talk with Ann and the Land Trust and bring your neighbors.
So who is if the land trust isn't the one who did the emergency designation?
County Community Development Department assessed the application and determined it was an emergency, that we had to move through this from a public health perspective.
Right.
We had to solve these problems, and they deemed it was an emergency under the standards that they have under the Coastal Act. And so, there's a whole process that follows once you do that. But the permit, the emergency permit's been issued. It was issued last week, yeah, so.
I understand that, and so, but who is the contact person there?
So the contact for this project is Manny, I believe.
I think, I talked to him.
Okay.
I read the plans, I read everything.
Here's what I'll do. I will get in contact with our contact and find out who they recommend we should put you in contact with. Which sounds like a lot of rigmarole, but really what I'm just saying is, before I send you to the wrong person, so that you're then sent somewhere else, let me find out exactly who you should be talking to, and I promise, and you've got a lot of witnesses, so write it in the hearsay if I don't do it. I promise to get you a name and a number and an email of a person that you can speak to.
And use me as a backup. Come to me if you don't get the information you want, and I'll connect you. My connection's through the director who will tell you who below her is the one to contact for questions.
I want to second that you spoke up and agree with Andy for your courage to do that. And as my wife often says, it takes all of the above to make it work. So thank you.
So thank you all.
Thank you, Dennis.
Have a good weekend. Good to see you.
Yeah, well, it happens.